when I made Iqbal, I would not do what a lot of Indian filmmakers at that time living abroad were doing, which is they would depict stories in India where everyone spoke English. I hear so many filmmakers say that failure, when that film flopped, I sat and I analyzed it and I said, oh, this is what I should do.
Yeah.
What kind of a ridiculous, asinine statement is that? Ashai didn't work.
Ashai didn't work. Yeah.
Ashai is till today, I think it's the best script I've written. Nothing in my life will ever come close to Hyderabad Blues. That's what people, just are craving for every second.
Yeah.
And it's the wrong reason to be in the profession. I've had my ass kicked more times than I can remember in this career.
Get slapped by the audience. We get a slap anyway.
Subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss another update from India Forums.
The difficult is possible, the impossible will take longer. Just as the moment I even saw it and I heard it, I immediately wanted to, just go home and make sure I have like a coat made out of it, make a frame out of it, and don't worry, I'll make sure to credit none other than the makers of this show, the Rajiv Gandhi Assassination case, and I have the lovely team with me. We're not talking about this, we're going to about so many more things. So hi guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Lovely. And as I said, this was very quote-worthy, but I'll get to the, brass tacks here. I've seen the show. I've seen the entirety of it.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
Yes,
okay.
And I absolutely loved it. I know it's pretty obvious to say that and, not to make you just feel good. I genuinely loved it. So I'll just, right away dive into it with you, sir. I think I have this very, fascination thing to see that you started like 27 years ago, right? Of course, here you are, you've made a show. You've been repeatedly saying that you made sure that to humanize the two aspects that we're talking about here. Also to make sure that there are no modern parallels when it comes to the political environment ecosystem of this. Correct? In such a scenario, as a filmmaker, you've been experienced enough, but you still have to make a very cohesive screenplay that manages to entertain, that manages to make sure that we are not really reading an audio book, so to speak.
Correct.
So what are the kind of do's and don'ts that you really take care of, intrinsically, and more so with your own experience as well?
See, if you've reached that stage in your life of filmmaking or actually of any other profession where you're kicking back in a chair and saying, I got this, I think it's time to move on. I think it's really time to find another profession. I think if you're at the position where you're like, oh man, I haven't done this before, but damn, I'm going to attempt this, I'm going to see how I can do this. And on my checklist, I had never adapted a book.
Yeah.
I almost did in the past, but never did it. In this case, it was hitting two birds with one stone. It was a book and it was also a true crime. So I was like, oh, haven't done that either. And, I was off and running. But the biggest challenge with any true incident is the fact that a lot of the people are still alive. You want to make sure you do right by them.
Right.
You want to make sure that the words that you're putting in your actors' mouths to depict a character are in the reasonable realm of what they would say.
Right.
We're not going to get everything right. So this was one of the most terrifying projects because the writing took so much out of us. I had two other co-writers that because you just wanted to make sure that every word was, carefully parsed and you didn't make any mistakes. So it was a huge challenge. And then of course comes the actual set and the making of it, where once again, you're constantly testing when you put the camera and you see the real life space. I hope I'm doing this right. I hope, this is right by all the characters and the kind of lives they lived in the spaces they inhabited.
Correct.
So, huge challenge.
Huge challenge.
Yeah.
But did you have specific rules? We've talked about the don'ts, so to speak, because as you mentioned, you're a little cognizant about everything. But what are the do's? Because, I think is that easy or is that difficult?
See, in the do's, there's only one overriding thing. You have to make it interesting and engaging.
Precisely.
It's as simple as that. Different filmmakers use different formats. Some might have splashy camera angles, camera moving quickly. I used a very, very stoic, restrained approach.
Correct.
The camera does virtually nothing. It sits there. The characters do a lot of the talking. There is a certain zero gloss,
Yeah.
not non-gloss,
Yeah,
to
true.
the whole thing. It's just stripped down. That was the approach that I used. It all sounds fancy. If it's not engaging, if the story doesn't move,
Yeah.
if it's not gripping, then you haven't done your job.
True.
So that's always the biggest do. Is it engaging enough? Is it catching the audience's attention?
Perfect, fabulous. And of course, the lovely SIT team. You know, I couldn't help. And you know, right away, what I want to ask the three of you is, sir, even before I get to it, sir, thank you for completely torturing me and, you know, annihilating my basic experience of how to see an actor thanks to Super Deluxe. I'm sure आपको, you know, काफी लोगों ने बोल दिया होगा. A lot of people must have told you this, but to see how sweet of a man this is and what he did with Super Deluxe is insane. I just had to say that. Now, you know, obviously coming to this show, what I found the most interesting thing about the three of you as a team, and what you obviously had your own traits to play around with, right? But the best part about this is there are no tropey things, that there is a comical sidekick, or you know, there is this underdog story of a character who's probably considered good for nothing or फिर कुछ बड़ा करता है. There is simplicity in all of them, and it still works. But for actors, it is very difficult, right? कि on paper, it might seem very vanilla to read. Execution तो बहुत बाद में आता है कि चलो अच्छा करेंगे, ये करेंगे, वो करेंगे. How do you make sure that it is still interesting to you on paper, and when you're going to have a vision about it?
See, fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, what could be more interesting than this? You know what I'm saying? This is interesting enough. This incident shook not only our country, our countrymen and women and children, but the whole world as well. You know? This is something which was in those times unheard of, and completely new way devised to assassinate people. You know, and so this is interesting enough, and all we needed, I think, what we needed to do was to just be honest to the investigation, which is so full of twists and turns, and you know, findings and non-findings, and shock value and awe value. All. If I can talk about just myself right now, it was just about being completely dedicatedly honest to the script, to what these people were, you know, and a lot of them still are, you know,
Right.
and I think just the responsibility of being these people genuinely was interesting enough to keep us hooked to what we know best, which is, you know, acting. And yeah, I mean, it's a good question for me, because I never thought it like this. How do I engage myself with it? I mean, it's engaging enough, brother, you know.
Right. Fair.
Yeah.
Back, sir.
And likewise, most of the time, less is more. It's like building a great palace, right? One stone at a time.
Right.
So sometimes you feel like as an actor, you are not contributing to the story, or you just standing there in the atmosphere, right? That's fine, because we have done a reading before the shoot, right?
True.
So we are well aware of what our characters are, what the purpose, and why they are standing there without any movement or even single dialogue. And that's actually satisfying when the writing is so filled, because it's taken from the real life, right? The real life is filled with details. You stick to that, that's enough. If it's a fiction, you have a chance to fill it up, right?
Correct.
So that's all.
Lovely, lovely, sir. And finally, Sahil.
You know, when you read text, when you read a book, or when you read a script, you get these pictures in your mind. As actors, we sometimes get pictures of us doing these scenes in certain ways. Sometimes it's exactly the way you imagined it, and sometimes it's absolutely different. Here, it was open to discovery. We would imagine it a certain way, and then we would think, this is all real.
Yeah.
This is all from history. It's not something that we have the freedom to even imagine a certain way. But once we started shooting, once we started materializing, bringing everything on set, it kind of became a single your imaginations and Nagesh sir's ideas and how the scenes actually, like he said, the camera does nothing and there's a lot of talking. Sometimes it's easy for an actor to get lost in the text.
Correct.
But here, it was so meticulously detailed and everything was so in the right place that it felt like everything is coming naturally. It was just flowing. And surprising because none of it was easy things to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely, absolutely. And now I'm just gonna talk about the elephant in the room. I would say, and this is purely, which is very ironic as well, that the show is coming on an OTT platform, but the idea of OTT lately has been very different from the inception of it. We wanted to have the best content out there. Make sure still the best part is that fabulous actors like you keep getting opportunities, and obviously a director like you keeps getting opportunities. But there is such a pool of content out there, right? There is the biggest problem right now is awareness. To make sure, of course, we do these interviews, we make sure that we try to, spread the word as much as possible, but it's obviously not going to penetrate to the remote areas sometimes, more often than not. In a situation like this, apart from the fact that obviously we feel great that we're getting work, we're getting paid and everything, in the larger scheme of things, do you believe that as filmmaker and as director, as actors, do you have any sort of a, way to think about things that we still want our content to be, reaching the maximum people, but also not really, sort of contaminating the idea of OTT in the first place?
It's something I have never worried about in my entire career. Everything that happens past the point of me completing a project is chance. I mean, someone can do one interview and that thing could go viral and become a mega hit. We could sit here for another 10 days and talk our hearts out and no one would watch the show, right?
Fair.
I mean, there's so much that goes on with that are beyond your control, that the fact that I'm sitting here as a filmmaker, the fact that a career happened because 25 events lined up and my film found success. Post that, some films have worked, some have not worked. So it's something I have never worried about ever.
Yeah.
Of course, I sit in the dark and keep my fingers crossed
Yeah.
and hope that it finds an audience. But what happens with it is just find the next project.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
You guys, please.
Yeah, I second what Nagesh bhai just said. I think it's futile to worry about these things, because just like life, nothing is in your hands or in your control. You just do what you can do to the best of your ability and move on. I always, after every project, sir, I just say the same thing to myself. What's next?
Correct?
What's next?
Correct.
You can't let the glory of it, ruin,
Or the failure of it.
or the failure of
Yeah.
it to ruin your mood.
And it does. And it's
Of
okay.
course, yeah. It's very human.
You take those punches, a couple of days you can wallow in self-pity.
Yeah.
Everything is good. But you cannot let that run your life. And it's not just the failures. You can't let the success run your life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what people, just are craving for
Yeah.
every second.
Yeah.
And it's the wrong reason to be in the profession.
That's true.
And,
Please.
Younger actor, more experienced actor, please,
Please, Shahil.
please, Vaid.
regarding this particular question, it's a very nice question actually. And filmmaking, I think it's a combination of art and business, right? If you are going to make judgment or going to decide you are going to do a project out of datas, you are tend to fail 95%, right? You have to follow your instinct, the old classic way. It's all like templated, right? Everything is 7 minutes, one twist, 14 minutes, one character have to die, the 15 minutes, the character arc have to be changed.
Yeah.
That's actually killing the entertainment, right?
Right.
So, believing in instinct, and they always quote numbers, right? I am asking them, what about the decision they took on the onset of the project?
Right.
Right? They never talk about that. They only talk about the end thing, that is numbers. That's the flaw lies there. So whenever we try to make something new, it's a struggle, but that's better rather than doing a acceptable project by the producers
Which
or
might
the
be
OTT
commercially more viable. Yeah.
and get slapped by the audience. We get a slap anyway. So it's in the beginning,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Better to be slapped for the right reasons. Lovely. Sahil, please.
I mean, I have to agree with everything they're saying, but I just like to add, he's right. You know, the failures or the successes they shouldn't drive you or your career or your passion towards what you do. You do what you have to do. And if you haven't done your job at the best of your ability, you will regret it. You know, when the time goes by and you sit in a room and say, hey, that didn't work, you know you can point a finger at yourself and say, it didn't work because you didn't prepare enough. It didn't work because you didn't put enough work into this character or this script. You didn't read it enough number of times. You didn't rehearse enough number of times, because like Baksa said, on the onset of a project, on the onset of everything in life, that's the one opportunity you have as any professional of any sort to prepare, to put in the hard work, and then it's not in your hands.
Yeah.
At least you don't have that regret. If it's a success or a failure, with this format, it's very new to me. I mean, with this, there is posterity. And aaj nahi to kal, somebody is going to find out about it. They're like, hey, you know what? I want to watch that.
Yeah.
They're going to open up Sony Live. They're going to watch the show.
Correct.
It might not be this week. It might not be the next week. I hope it's the whole country watches it
Yeah.
on the 4th of July. We all hope that. But the good thing about formats like this is that someday somebody is going to watch it. And then they're going to get back to you and they'll be like, hey, you know what? This is what we think. And it keeps happening. Till date, all the projects that I've done.
That's true. Yeah.
Some random person would send you a message 10, 11 years later.
Yeah.
Hey, I watched this film last night. You were really good in it. 11 years later.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah.
In my perspective, if you ask me, you will only feel bad if you don't work enough, prepare enough.
Fabulous, lovely. And you know, Nagesh sir, I have this observation about you, because I mean, just like anybody, let's be not too obvious, but obvious that I've been the biggest fan. I started, I mean, I'm a 30-year-old, so I literally saw Hyderabad Blues right when it came out. Obviously not unable to watch it in the theaters, but I saw it later, a while later. And right from there to here, as I mentioned, you've had a fantastic career. What I have an observation, and that leads to my question finally, is that I saw you doing the Hyderabad Blues, the Rockford and all that. Then you veered into the pulse of Hindi cinema, where you tried to marry your ideology as a filmmaker with a bit of commercial sense as well, in the right way. I don't mean commercial, I mean like a big film or anything, but the right commercial sense, maybe rooted, you know, rooted being the, did that come to you naturally, or was it a very conscious effort from your side? And once you answer that, I'll just ask you 3 things in the same question and we'll be done with it.
Okay. See, the first 4 films that I made were entirely 5 were almost entirely in English.
Yeah, exactly.
So, by its very, the language decided my audience. So, it kept it small. But I was very clear as a filmmaker that when I made Iqbal, I would not do what a lot of Indian filmmakers at that time living abroad were doing, which is they would depict stories in India where everyone spoke English.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And I was like, I'm not going to set this film in rural India and have the father, and just to keep an international audience happy.
Right.
Because right until then, my film before Iqbal was Hyderabad Blues 2.
Correct.
That milieu was still urban, educated India. So that everyone spoke English in the film. And I was fine with that. So with Iqbal, I made a conscious shift to be true to the script.
Right.
I hadn't decided that, oh, I need a wider audience. I want to go to all of India. The language decided that. So when Iqbal happened in Hindi and it worked,
Yeah.
it just opened up, the audience.
Yeah.
And then the stories that I began to tell had to cater to the language.
Right.
Unless I had another story which I could go back and do it in English in my space, I couldn't go back easily to that space.
Fair. Yeah.
I mean, look at all the films. Iqbal, Dor, all of these have people of a certain strata.
True.
And all of a sudden, all of them couldn't be speaking English. So anyways, so I had to be true to that space.
Fabulous.
And that's how the audience built to wherever we are today.
Lovely. And just to follow that up, in this entire journey so far, what has been the stroke of surprise success that you obviously love, because who doesn't, that deserved appreciation, where you felt that, okay, this is something that actually we all want our projects to be having that deserved appreciation, that, and one learning which was not really a failure per se, but that failure taught you so much?
Nothing in my life will ever come close to Hyderabad Blues. I made a film to prove to myself that I could make a film. That was the first thing. I mean, prior to that, I would be sitting with my friends in college, and every time I got drunk, I would say, "Ek din main filmmaker banunga." I mean, everyone heard it so often. Everyone was just bored out of their minds. Yeah, whatever. And I was a chemie. Then I go off to the US, I get my master's, I start working.
Right.
And that, this constant claim just kind of fizzled out. So I had to make Hyderabad Blues or lose my sanity. So I did. Hyderabad Blues' success shocked me.
Yeah.
Because I made the film. I didn't know what I made. My dream scenario was I would get it to a couple of film festivals, and then I would use the film as my calling card to distributors to say, hey, listen, I can make a film. Now give me money for another film.
Correct.
I thought it would just be a visiting card. And all of a sudden, the film finds an audience. And in India.
Yeah.
I never thought my intent was to take the film abroad. As a matter of fact, the true story is I finished the film.
Yeah.
I could only afford one print. I ran out of all the money I
Lovely.
had. I took the 6 cans of film, put it in a suitcase, and I left for the US.
Oh.
And someone here from Mumbai called me. The first Mumbai Film Festival was happening, and they invited me. And I brought those 6 cans back in November, screened it, and the film took off. So look at the ridiculousness of something which was not in my control.
Yeah.
When I fully intended to look the other way,
The
I
other
went
way.
this way. So that success will never be replicated. After that, I'm already a filmmaker. So each time I do something, my fingers are crossed, toes are crossed, legs are crossed, you're waiting. The film didn't work. God damn, there's... So I've had my ass kicked more times than I can remember in this career. So it's not something that, it hurts. There's no two ways about it, but it's not something I worry about. Your last thing about lessons learned.
Yeah.
There is one thing in this profession. There is no lesson to learn.
Wow.
True.
That is fascinating.
True.
What are you going to learn? I hear so many filmmakers say, that failure, when that film flopped, I sat and I analyzed it and I said, oh, this is what I shouldn't do.
Yeah.
What kind of a ridiculous, asinine statement is that? So, let's take one of my many flops.
Yeah.
Bombay to Bangkok.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So what did it teach me? I shouldn't make a romantic comedy about an Indian cook and a Thai girl set in Bangkok. Is that the lesson I have to learn?
No, of course I don't think
I mean,
so.
what does one... Ashai didn't work.
Ashai didn't work. Yeah.
Ashai is till today, I think it's the best script I've written. And Ashai didn't work. So what should I take away from that? That, acha, don't deal with cancer patients in future. Acha, good point to self. Don't deal with cancer patients. So there's no lesson to learn in this business. You trust your instincts, you make something, and with a freaking prayer, chuck it out there and just hope it sticks. That's
Fantastic. I think you might say that lessons are not learned, but you've definitely imparted a lot of lessons just by talking the way you did. And once it's going to go live, I'm sure a lot of aspiring filmmakers are right away going to be like, okay, this is what I wanted to know, the brass tacks, and still, getting all the inspiration again. Thank you so much. This was an absolute pleasure. I've already said it enough that I've seen the show. I cannot wait for everyone to watch it. When we get some real feedback, sometimes real-time feedback as well. So I cannot wait to watch that as well. But all the best for this and everything you've lined up ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.